Coming up on Currently, we will explain what causes the E. coli bacteria to build up in lakes, how the levels are measured, and what elevated E. coli measurements mean for beachgoers. Plus, Beth Milligan breaks down several new DDA projects. That's all ahead on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Christal Frost. We have a great show for you. Beth Milligan, head writer for Traverse City Ticker, is here on her vacation, and we are both in holiday mode as we kick it old school and discuss a few key stories this week. This podcast was recorded on Thursday, July 3rd at 3:30 p.m. The Tigers are 54-33, but that said, things may change by the time you're watching or listening. And support for Currently comes from Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. And from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner that's committed to the well-being of our community. You can visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City. It's a chill hangout with a full bar and a low-key setting and pinball. Well, Beth,
hi.
Thank you for breaking your vacation a bit to come in and talk news.
You know what? The news never stops,
even
when you're on vacation.
Is it hard for you to not pay attention to the news?
It is, yes.
Is it really?
I'll have a different kind of news on vacation. Like maybe I'll watch C-SPAN for several hours, which I did today.
Oh,
something like that.
That's fun.
Yeah, we had some national news. But yes, it never stops, never slows down.
Never slows down, that news. Well, we have a really interesting story. I'm really glad that we're breaking into this. And for those of you who have been following the show since we started, but also maybe fans of what we used to do when we were on WTCM News Talk 580 together, you really go deep into covering some of the stories that sometimes get misinformed out there. And I think one of the things that has happened recently are the elevated E. coli levels in Traverse City beaches, to be just to be specific. And so we thought maybe we would talk about this, given that there were no swim advisories at 4 beaches last week. That we still have impacts at Sunset, and the Cherry Festival Sand Sculpture was closed, or canceled, I should say. So I really need to get into this a little bit. First of all, I think the knee-jerk reaction for people who hear about beaches being closed for E. coli is that there's too many people swimming and maybe not using the restroom properly. And that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yes. I really wanted to cover this because of the beach, not closures, but advisories, no swim advisories, they will go and post on the signs, and then people can decide for themselves not to swim. But I would highly recommend not doing that when there's an advisory in place. I saw so many comments and misinformation online that I did think it would be good to talk about it. And we can get into, yes, what's happening with the E. coli. It's not just humans, but also just to explain a little bit about what is going on.
Yeah.
So the Watershed Center partners with local health departments every summer to test beaches in Grand Traverse, Leelanau, and Benzie counties. There's funding that comes from the EPA through the Michigan Beach Guard program to do that. There's also some municipal support. And then the Health Department of Northwest Michigan also tests beach in Antrim County.
Okay.
So they will do weekly testings every Wednesday throughout the summer. They post the results the next day on Thursday. You can find those on the Health Department website or Facebook or on the Watershed Center's Facebook page. And then there are 4 levels of advisory for each beach that they test. So 1 means fully safe, great to go swimming.
Full body contact.
Full body contact, okay. 2 means contact above the waist, not advised.
Okay.
So maybe it's okay for skin contact, but we're worried about
don't get it in your eyes,
swallowing water, or getting it, inside your body somehow. 3 is no body contact advised, stay out of the water. And 4, which is very rare, is a gross contamination. You need to fully avoid the beach area. So when a beach is at a 2 or above, they will keep sampling that beach until the results go back to normal to let folks know as soon as possible that it's okay to.
So they do that on a daily basis?
Yeah. So example for Sunset Beach right now, which has been testing above normal for the past week. Today, they still had it at a 2. So tomorrow, when the show airs on the 4th of July, they will be posting an update on that. So they're testing it again today to let folks know.
Okay.
So E. coli is what we're really testing for here. This is a public health risk. It's a bacteria that can cause illness, especially in children and people with compromised immune systems. If there's E. coli in the water, it means there's some kind of fecal contamination, which can also mean that many other kinds of viruses and bacteria are present.
Okay.
So there's a lot of risk. As you were bringing up, one of the biggest misconceptions that I see online when these E. coli advisories happen is people thinking that either people are going to the bathroom in the water and the beach, or that somehow the sewer system has failed, the sewer plant has overflowed, something like that. That is rarely the case. We have had events in the past where we have had raw sewage overflow into the river or the bay. That has happened. The city of Traverse City has addressed many of those problem spots, and I will just say right now, over the next several years, we're seeing tens of millions of dollars being invested into our sewer and water systems. Yes. So lots of upgrades happening there. What we're usually seeing with these E. coli advisories is animal waste.
Okay.
So we know this because the last few years, the Watershed Center has been source tracking samples, meaning they're doing testing for genetic markers in the samples that they're taking from the water. So they can test to see whether contamination is coming from certain categories. There's human markers, cows, pigs, dogs, foxes, coyotes, and seagulls. They're working in the future to have markers for geese and ducks, which are a big source of contamination, but they can't identify them specifically yet. In multiple years running now, gulls have been the #1 genetic marker that they're seeing in the sample. So it's bird waste is what's really contributing to these events. Human markers are often barely detectable or at very low levels.
Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that, humans don't have some sort of an impact on this, especially if, say, you're walking your dog and you don't clean up after his waste or her waste, right?
Right.
Or you're leaving your trash, in the beach or on the somewhere and not taking care of your trash. Like, obviously, that can affect levels, right?
Yeah, because typically what's happening is two things. Two kind of weather events really affect E. coli advisories at the beaches. When it rains, the rain runs over the ground. It collects everything that's on the ground: trash, dog poop, bird poop, pesticides, fertilizer, oil, everything.
My sunglasses.
Your sunglasses. Look for those out in the bay somewhere. All of that runoff either goes directly into the river or bay, depending on where it's coming from, or into storm drains that then empty into the bay.
Okay.
So that's where we're getting that waste. If you see beaches with either storm drains, or if you see a high number of birds kind of floating out on the water, those are beaches I would normally keep an eye on because the storm drains are a big source of the waste. Also, when there are strong onshore winds, that can sometimes cause E. coli levels to go up because it will stir up the sediments. Sometimes that bacteria has settled but will stir back up. So if the water looks milky or chocolate, kind of like a chocolate and milk or chalky look to it, that's usually a good time to avoid the water.
Yeah. And last week in particular, we not only had lots of rain, we had lots of wind.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the perfect recipe for what we're seeing this week and beyond.
Yeah. And if it's been dry for a while and then we have a rain event, that's another thing because, you'll have wild animals will go to like the bathroom in the storm drains or something. Or again, there's maybe waste building up in people's yards or something. Or during Cherry Festival, we might have a lot of extra trash around on the beaches. And so if it's been building up in the storm drain for a while and then there's a rain, there's even more, waste that's kind of running out. So typically what I tell people is the real challenge with this is we have a lack of real-time reporting.
Right. I mean, if it's taking 24 hours in some cases to get the measurements back and then you're reporting it out to people, I mean, that's a delay.
It's a snapshot of a photo of a beach from yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not what's happening on the beach today. And that's a real challenge. And that's not a challenge just in our area. It's true almost everywhere that beach sampling happens because doing regular E. coli testing, it can take hours, often up to 24 hours, to process the results from the samples. The EPA has been working on more rapid result tests. They're quite expensive right now still. Most, communities can't afford them. They have specialized expertise or equipment that goes with them. And they're sometimes still not as accurate. So it's possible in the future that we'll have better rapid testing technology or even possibly something like AI or predictive models that could look at rainfall, look at temperatures, and maybe have a kind of forecast of risk levels. But right now, this is a system that we have. So we kind of have to just go back a day, look at the snapshot in time, and let folks know, okay, this beach still might be contaminated.
So if we had a rain event, for example, it rained all day on a Tuesday, would you go to that beach on a Wednesday?
I would not.
Yes.
And this is something I would tell people, this is kind of the advice I give to people because I do like to talk about it because I've researched it so much, is even if you don't have access to a beach report, if you're somewhere without internet or you're just not sure, I go off the weather. If it has rained, I would avoid the water, usually at least for a day. And what I'm typically looking for is if there's a rain event, I want to see a long period of sunshine before I go swimming. Sunshine does break down E. coli, so that UV light does help to eventually disperse the bacteria, but it takes time. So generally, I just tell people I would not go swimming in general right after a hard rain, especially if it's near a storm drain.
Yeah, and a hard rain versus a little sprinkle here and there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, prolonged rain, obviously, the longer or harder it's raining, the more runoff you're going to have into the water system.
Or a very windy event, right. You're stirring up the sediment.
Again, where you see that kind of milky water.
Yeah, I have seen that milky water. Yeah, and it doesn't make you want to go in the first place. But, if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think maybe the last thing I would say to wrap up, to give people some tips, just like practical advice. First of all, if you found out kind of belatedly that you were swimming in a contaminated area, again, most of our local beaches, if you check the signs, they will have the advisories up.
Okay.
So you can tell there's one at this beach or not, or you can go to the websites. If you think you've been exposed, some of the typical symptoms are stomach cramping, nausea, vomiting, low fever, diarrhea. You mentioned earlier, what are things that people can do to not contribute to it? So one is definitely clean up your trash, clean up your animal waste, go out when you're taking your dog for a walk, pick that up. We do still, like you said, we do still have some human contributions to the waste itself in the water. So make sure if you have young children at the beach, get them to use the restroom. Don't leave them in the water too long without going to the restroom. People who are using diapers or swim diapers, put those into trash and start burying them. That sometimes, unfortunately,
people are burying those.
Sometimes people bury the diapers. I do not recommend doing that. That doesn't help. And the last thing is, even though it's fun, especially for kids, don't feed the seagulls, don't feed the birds and ducks, because the more they congregate on our beaches, the more waste is going into the water.
Before we go, do you know if there's any conversation happening? I mean, is there anything that we can do maybe as a community or as a government to just, I don't know, is there a filtration system that we can do? I don't know if there's any vegetation we can plant or anything like that maybe helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason that the Watershed Center has been doing this source tracking is if we get an idea which beaches tend to have the most contamination and where that contamination is coming from, if we know Sunset is always really high and has a lot of seagulls, then maybe there are things that we can do to deter seagulls from hanging out at Sunset, or things that we can change about the storm drain to delay runoff. So yes, the hope is the more specific we can get about the causes of contamination, the better we can address those.
I feel like if we just make fun of the seagulls, just bully them a little bit and just be they won't come.
Yeah, right? Maybe just don't give them French fries. Things it's fun to throw it to them. I know, but
but don't do
add to the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about some projects that the DDA is about to tackle. But first, a word for our lead sponsor, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. Now, I have to say, Traverse City is blessed with a variety of truly remarkable businesses who are not only bringing quality merchandise and service to our community, but they're continuously working to ensure that those in our community are cared for. And for 65 years, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings has been Traverse City's original furniture store, bringing exceptional merchandise and quality to shoppers from this area and beyond. But they've also embedded themselves as a major investor in community. And Mike and the staff from Golden-Fowler, they dedicate their time, their talent, and even their showroom to numerous nonprofit organizations across the region, whether it's raising money for children's organizations, quietly donating mattresses for housing organizations, or turning their entire space into the Zonta Festival of Trees headquarters. Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings is more than a furniture store. They're deeply invested in caring for this community. And that's why when you do business with Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, you're doing business with that dedicated community partner. So when you're ready for new furniture, you can experience Traverse City's original furniture store, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings on Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's furniture that you'll love to come home to. And welcome back to Currently. Now, Beth, we have 3 different projects that the DDA is hoping to tackle in the coming months. And I want to start with a big one, one that everyone loves. I mean, when you talk about the farmers market in Traverse City, people just lose their minds. It is a well-attended event for good reason. There are numerous vendors. And I remember during the pandemic when it went away for a little while, and then they came back with like a hands-free farmers market,
like an online ordering system. I did that during the pandemic.
I did that. That's how much we love the farmers market. It just becomes a part of your regular day, really, twice a week when you're here in Traverse City in the summer. So what are some of the changes that the DDA is maybe, anticipating or hoping to do in the coming months?
Yeah, so the DDA has 2 primary funding mechanisms. There's the 2 TIF districts downtown, the Old Town TIF and TIF 97. So TIF 97 district covers kind of the main downtown area. That plan is expiring in 2027.
Yep.
So they have a couple of years of funding left unless the plan were to be extended, but that would have to go through a public vote. So in the meantime, in case it is not extended and it does expire in a couple of years, the DDA has really spent time discussing like what are the main projects we want to tackle with the funding that is left in TIF 97. And there are 3 kind of priority projects, one of which is a farmers market pavilion. Mm-hmm. So a pavilion has been discussed for ever. I mean, I can remember covering this years and years ago.
Yeah.
They got to a design in 2017. The idea being that they would have a permanent shed in the farmers market parking lot that would provide shelter from the weather and the elements for the farmers and shoppers, would create wider aisles. Many of us who go to the farmers market know it can get a little crowded, especially during peak time with strollers and dogs, which they ask you not to bring, but people do anyways. So they really want to create better infrastructure for this kind of beloved market. So they recently approved a contract to update the design. And the hope would be that Lot B, the parking lot where the farmers market takes place, is going to be updated by the city next year. They're going to be reconstructing it. They need to do some stormwater upgrades. They need to repave the lot. So at the same time that they're doing that, that would be good timing, the DDA believes, to put in this pavilion. So they're going out to design now. The farmers market vendors are very in support of this. Many of them signed a letter of support for the pavilion. I will say I've seen some interesting comments from the community about some people wonder if that's the best long-term location for the farmers market. I will just say, doing our trend of trying to address misinformation, one of the challenges about the farmers market is the DDA runs it. It's in a DDA district. It uses DDA funding. So, locations that have been looked at in the past, like the open space has been challenging. It's very windy right on the water. They tried, and they still do it now during Cherry Festival, for example. They'll be at the Old Town Deck. Mm-hmm. They've tried Rotary Square. The farmers do not like those other locations. They can be very constrained. They can be hard to park and get to. They do not see the same sales numbers that they do when at their main location. And if you took it out of downtown, like, for example, people have said the Civic Center, then again, someone else has to run it. It can't be the DDA if it's outside of the DDA district. So I think, the farmers and the DDA feel that parking lot is the best long-term location for this. And if it is going to be the long-term location, the vendors would really like to see something that's nice, that provides that shelter, but also maybe it's a visual display. Like it's if you look at Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor, they have these kind of permanent pavilions, and it really just sort of creates a community gathering space where the DDA is hopeful it won't just be for the farmers market, but maybe we can have other kinds of community events.
Yeah, like a holiday market, something like that.
Things like that.
That could be fun.
And so other projects that are tying right into this area, so of the 3 big projects, Farmers Market Pavilion is one. The second is riverfront improvements, and we're talking specifically about the pedestrian bridge that goes over from the farmers market to the J. Smith Walkway. So that bridge is going to need to be replaced at some point. looking at improving the J. Smith walkway, maybe making some riverfront improvements in that alley there. So that's the second project. That's also in design. And then the third project is Rotary Square. And so Rotary Square is, at the corner of State and Union Streets. This property is owned by the DDA. It is going to become some type of public civic square. And they're in the process right now of getting community feedback to decide what that's going to look like.
Right.
So they recently had an open house where they presented 6 concepts. And I went to that open house and looked at those concepts and reported about this. They essentially ranged from a concept that would be more of like a plaza. So we're talking about like hardscaping. You'd have benches and infrastructure, things that are, this is like a public
I can touch it.
Yes. A tactile public, like hardscaped square.
Okay.
All the way to, on the other end of the spectrum, a very naturalized park, a lot of greenery, maybe passive enjoyment, but not as many amenities or hardscaping options. And people tended to like a mix of those things. They wanted some infrastructure. They like the idea of different amenities, things that they can enjoy in the park or places to sit, maybe an amphitheater or a small stage for
nice
acoustic shows or things like that. But they also definitely liked park-like amenities. They like landscaping. They like trees. They maybe want some visual barriers to the giant AT&T parking lot that sort of sprawls next door that everyone's like, why is that still here? So they are right now getting down to trying to get to a final design. If folks would like to see where we're at, we're now down to 2 concepts, 2 refined designs, and they are going to be unveiled at Rotary Square on Tuesday, July 8th, at an open house that will go from 4:30 to 7 p.m., and that will be another opportunity for people to sort of see what they've done is those 6 concepts they had before. People were able to say, oh, I liked this from this one, but I didn't like this. Like they can kind of pick and choose.
Right.
And so they've combined many elements into sort of 2 proposed ideas that people can give more feedback on with the idea by this fall, we're going to start getting towards a final design.
Yeah. So if you go to dda.downtowntc.com and look for Rotary Square there, you can see all of the options that were presented. And then what is going to be unveiled is sort of a mix of all of the feedback. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, because I think the hope is, with all 3 of these projects, the Riverwalk, the Farmers Market, and Rotary Square, they're going to, through this design process, get to some hard cost estimates.
Right.
And that is going to allow them to say, okay, we do actually have enough money to get all 3 of these done. Like we can start construction next year and get some work done. Or maybe we can do some of Rotary Square and some of the Riverwalk, but some will have to be saved later or maybe funded by the city if TIF expires in the future. So they're going to be using these design outcomes and cost estimates to say what work can we actually finish in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I love a good public space, honestly. And it's just one of those things that you don't realize how much work goes into this. And I think they've done a really good job of trying to get public input. Sometimes people come late to the game and they go, hey, nobody asked me. But, they've been asking for months.
They have. There has been a very extensive public input process. And again, it's not done. There's a chance Tuesday, but there will be additional for all of these. If you can't make the physical open house, they understand sometimes people have work or kids and can't get there. They have also always put these online. And there's an online survey that will open up afterwards so you can give your feedback that way. And then in the future, if we do see some improvements come to Rotary Square, I think that area that sort of heads south into Old Town could really look different in the next couple of years because we have Fish Pass under construction.
Oh my gosh.
We could have Rotary Square, so all of a sudden have kind of this vibrant public space on the corner there. All of which I think the hope is that will kind of draw traffic down Union and incorporate more Old Town into the downtown area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know. I know you'll be there, so you'll be...
Yeah, I will be there.
You'll be talking about it, and maybe we can touch on what those designs look like next episode.
That sounds great.
I love that. So before we go, I have to ask you, what are you looking forward to in the coming week, my friend?
Yeah, well, my vacation will sadly be coming to an end, so... no, but I'm excited too. I want to plug an event next Wednesday at 3:00 at the Garden Theater in Frankfurt.
Oh, yeah.
the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Our dear friend Erin,
yes,
will be emceeing that because the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy is presenting that. So there's like a lot of shorts that are based on like the outdoors or protecting the environment and nature.
Yeah.
It's a free event, so you can come see all these great shorts.
You don't see that often.
Not often. And it's first come, first serve. So I recommend maybe go to Frankfurt early, have a little lunch at Stormcloud, and then see the festival, which is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, so many great places to have lunch in Frankfurt, by the way. We should just go out there and eat at all the places.
Let's just eat at all the places.
I love that
sounds great.
idea. Fantastic. I am really stoked for going to the Pit Spitters on Thursday. And that's because it's 80s night at the Pit Spitters. I'm working on my costume right now. And, you know, you and I have about a 5.5-year age gap. And most of the time, I feel like it's okay. Like, I don't feel super old. But I have to ask you, did you ever have the 80s hair? Because you are young.
I was quite young. I was born in 84, so I was a kid in the 80s. I'm going to share a photo of myself. I think my parents were trying to get me to become some sort of national spokesman for Life Cereal in the hopes that we would be lifted into the upper echelons of society. That did not happen, but I do think it's a cute picture. And my hair, I would say, is a little big compared to what it is now.
But you have naturally curly hair.
I had like ringlets as a kid.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to share a picture of what I thought was the coolest hair on the planet. It's not 80s hair, but it was definitely hair I had in the 80s. And it's actually more of like a pixie cut. So I was sporting that before it was cool. I think it's because I tried to cut my own hair.
Yeah.
Way too old to do that. Like, I was definitely in my like 10, 11, 12-year-old phase.
Maybe you were unwittingly the inspiration for my pixie cut later in life.
I love that. I'll be sharing that one too. I love it. So we are back next Friday. I want to say thank you so much to Beth Milligan for yet another wonderful show. Be sure to subscribe to the show on all the platforms at crystalfrost.com. Follow us on social media and subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and Facebook. Currently is a Compass Local podcast produced locally by Pancake Boy Productions. And big thanks to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. And Beth, speaking of the Coin Slot, did you know that playing pinball can enhance brain function by engaging skills like quick thinking, hand-eye coordination, strategic planning, and focus, all while providing immediate feedback that motivates players to adjust their strategies?
I did not know that, but I'm going to attribute now all of my quick thinking to playing pinball because I do it a lot.
The reason I do it is it encourages mindfulness and it helps with stress release by demanding complete presence and engagement with the game. That leads to a state of flow where worries fade away. You can find your flow at the Coin Slot on East Front Street in Traverse City. Beth, see you next week. Happy 4th of July, everyone.